The host of RN Breakfast, Patricia Karvelas, joins us now in the studio for our regular chat on mornings. PK, g'day. What's happening on the free trade front?
There's a European delegation in Australia in negotiations with the Australian government for an EU-Australia free trade deal. Now, for those who are like, oh, she's talking about free trade, that's boring. It's not. Well, it is, but it also isn't. It's a big deal if Australia can pull it off. That has many advantages for our economy, but also the European economy. It has been stalled up until now, in fact, because under the previous government, the European Union, who were very serious about climate change and ambitions, had said that they didn't want to advance this with a government that was not interested in pursuing cutting emissions in a serious way. And the other issue was the French submarine deal. Now, both of these barnacles, so to speak, have been cleared according to the European Union. So now they're in full throttled negotiations. Now, I spoke to Bernd Lange. He is the EU Parliament's Committee on International Trade chair on RM Breakfast. And I asked him some really specific questions about the things that are holding up the deal. One thing, climate. Do they want Australia to be more ambitious? He says, no, you're on the right road now. Okay, so that's cleared. Then some other issues which I personally, as a Greek Australian, find really interesting, like the word feta. Can we use the word feta for Australian produce? He interestingly said he sees a pathway even through that, if there's Australian language framed around that.
Just give us a bit of context on that.
Well, the European Union has been pushing Australia, saying, OK, if we're going to have more of your agricultural products, if you're making dairy products like feta, which we do, you can't call them feta because that is a specific word which is used by, Greece, for instance, or a parmesan, a specific word used by Italy, which is unique and culturally important, but also about their products being dominant and seen as the supreme version of this. So a pathway through is important. It looks to me like they're finding one, which is interesting. Another issue, deforestation. They put demands on other countries around this. I said to him, are you concerned about Australia's deforestation? He says, no, Brazil's. And that is why we've stipulated that. So again, Australia's clear on that. In fact, he was really positive. And it looks to me like they could get a deal by February. And of course, and you wouldn't blame them for this politically, the Albanese government saying, see, we fixed some of these bigger problems, climate change and the issue of not taking it seriously, and now you're seeing progress. Still a lot has to happen. Negotiations go on, and it's very complex. And I imagine, it's nerd fest in those rooms in terms of every little detail and letter. But it is an interesting story that's happening while, the rest of the world has been watching the Queen's funeral. Yeah. I think there's been actual work going on in Canberra.
And in light of recent events, attention has turned to an extent to the possibility of an Australian Republic. The Prime Minister has been kind of putting that to one side a bit and saying the focus will definitely be on the voice to Parliament and Indigenous recognition. And it sounded like the Republic, if there was to be a referendum, that would be pushed to a second term. Is that clear?
No. What is clear is that it's definitely not happening in this term because the Prime Minister's made it clear. Is it happening in a second term? Not necessarily. There is no commitment to that, but there are some hints. He's already, before the Queen's death or any of this, already established an assistant minister for a republic. That gave people a few hints. Why would you establish an assistant minister unless you had some interest in seeing how you build this case? Since the Queen's death, he's been incredibly careful. He is absolutely treading a very careful line. And there is a new poll out today which explains everything about why Anthony Albanese has been speaking in the terms he has. No doubt part of it is because he genuinely, and I think he's right, understands that this is a momentous time and that being really politicised can be problematic, and respect for the Queen and the funeral and the process. But there's another reason. This new survey, an essential poll, suggests there's a 50-50 split between those who support the new UK monarch and those who don't in Australia. 50-50. That means we are a nation in a dead division. That doesn't mean division.
At this time.
At this time, and of course things can change, but at this time. Now, for the Prime Minister to go and start advocating on his own, when he has to land another reform, which is the voice to Parliament right now, he's made the assessment that now is not the right time. And in fact, his whole election has been about unifying the country. Does he want to put his big or little toe into waters which are based on that poll, and I think sentiment, you can probably tell anecdotally. I know people, for instance, who are not great fans of the British monarchy, but still think our system isn't broken and aren't enthusiastic about a change. But this is going to come back whether he likes it or not.
Yeah, what about managing expectations from the left?
Right, because, well, I think his answer on this for the next term is actually quite robust. Voice to Parliament is important. But when is it okay to start having conversations? I think conversations are just conversations, right? Like engaging people's interest. Yeah. I asked Patrick Gorman, who's the Assistant Minister to the Prime Minister, on my show this morning, and he said...
On the Republic.
On the Republic. Yes. And when these broader conversations about healing, Indigenous recognition, the Aboriginal story of Australia, when we can have those discussions too, because they intersect. And he said not until next week. Next week, business as usual. But Friday, we have this day of where there will be condolence motions. He said, not this week, but next week, business as usual. So he's actually provided a time frame. I imagine many people will have things to say, and there are many issues to discuss.
And I'm sure you'll jump in with gusto. Okay, we've got to leave it there. Great to have you here,
Thanks.
Patricia.